Well, I'm super excited to be here. That's a great introduction about where we're at in the process. I think that's awesome. My name is Coley Vietenhans. I'm a high school teacher in Federal Way, Washington. So on the West Coast, I'm super excited to be able to do this with you. The remote schedule this year has been awesome because we have these asynchronous Wednesdays, which makes it really easy for me to get to share about how Character Strong has helped us at our school without me having to miss kids, which I think is a big win on my part. But I'm excited to share a little bit about the work that we've done. Character Strong really works at making sure that we have people who are in the work talking about it. So it's not someone saying like, hey, this is a cool thing you should do. Trust me. It's like, hey, this is what's worked for us. Take my word for it because we're doing it. I'm excited because I think I will actually be back in August to give you that kind of next level PD. So it'll be a good kind of continual piece. I've been able to talk to two of your other middle schools about where they're at and where to go. And one of the things I think that we like to make sure as we're kicking this session off is that we recognize that it's May. Like we want to be very clear that this is a touch point to give you a sneak peek to help you with some thinking as you move forward. This is not a like, all right, we got 3 weeks left, let's do everything now. And I want to be very clear about that because coming as a teacher who also has PD in May, I know where we're at, I know where we are processing, I know what we're thinking, and I just want to just honor that like anxiety that I would have if I was sitting in your shoes of like, there's gonna be a bunch of stuff I have to do with this PD like right now. Our goal right now is just to give you a taste. We want to prepare you. We know that some people really need that overview before we can be ready to go for next year. And so we want to give that ahead of time to you to process. You have the recording again, so you're able to go back and look at that. But our goal today is to really just give you an overview of what Character Strong is all about and how to use some of the resources and maybe start to push our thinking in terms of what this is going to look like for us. One of the things I like to start off with today as we talk about these things is that we don't have to be bad to get better. And that's one of my core fundamental beliefs because as we're doing this work, as an educator, I never want to come off as someone who's telling you that like you're not doing good stuff. In fact, the reality is you wouldn't have brought us in if you weren't already doing awesome work. You're doing good things already. And I don't think that bringing in an extra group or a social emotional program means that you're not. It just means that we want to keep getting better. And so I really just want to like start with that. I view my job as not as a contractor where I'm going to come into your room and say like, we got to do this, this, and this, but more as like a local hardware store where if you have some projects you want to work on, I'm hoping to give you some tools, some tips, some tricks, some friendly know-how of like, here's how this has been successful for me. So let's jump into it. We want to make sure we're honoring your time. So we're going to move pretty quickly today. It is a large overview that I'm going to try to give you as much as possible to sit with and to think with. We'll be able to spend some more time to process in August and think about what this actually looks like and how this is going to be rolled out. But for now, we just want to give you this overview. So as we talk today about virtual PD, we like to start with a few agreements. Number one is I love seeing your faces and like your reactions. It's one of the things I missed in remote teaching is that I used to like say something and students would give me this like crooked side eye look when I said something stupid. And I haven't got that for so long. And so I love it. So if I say something dumb, give me that face back of like, wait, what are you talking about? Or if I say something you agree with, feel free to give the snaps or the nods, whatever that might look like. I feed off of, again, that energy from you all. It's super important. The second one is that we work to create brave spaces. And so we want to give you the opportunity to share today too. If you'd be willing to step into that space, what we'd ask you to do is to just put an exclamation point right in front of your name. You can rename yourself with that exclamation point in the top or like in the front of your name. That allows me to, one, have you pop up to the top of my list, but two, it lets me know that there's a person who I can call on to get things rolling. It doesn't mean you're the only person that's going to speak today, but it does mean that you're someone that can kick off a conversation. To do that, if you click on those three little dots above your picture, there'll be a little drop-down menu that says rename, or you can go to the participant list. There's a button that says more. If you click that, it'll pull it down as well, and it'll give you that option to rename and put the exclamation point right in the front. So appreciate that, Adrian, Joshua. Thank you for getting us rolling there. The last piece I will share is that attention is the rarest and purest form of generosity, and I just want to thank you for your time today. I know there are a lot of things that you're thinking about. There are a lot of things going on. There's a lot of things that we have to do right now. And so my hope is that after this hour together, you can walk away and say, hey, that was a good use of my time. That's the best compliment I can get, is that if your PD was good use of your time, that's a win. So let's dive into it. We're going to start with this question, or this statement, I guess. It's all about relationships. If I were to ask it as a question, I would ask you this. Raise your hand if you have at least one significant relationship that's important to you. We all pretty much raise our hands because we know that life fundamentally is about the relationships that we have with our peers, with our significant others, with our children, with the people in our lives. The reality, though, is I think this work in education is also all about relationships. If you're familiar with any of the research around ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, you know that students that are dealing with a lot of trauma as children, or just people who are dealing with a lot of trauma, they have a hard time to succeed in an academic setting. The research says the more ACEs you have, the harder it is to succeed, which is a very troubling piece of research, because I know that I work with a lot of students that are dealing with stuff. They're going through a lot of stuff. But if you continue in that research, there's actually one mitigating factor. There's one proven thing that says even if a student has a lot of things that they're dealing with, they can still be incredibly successful. And that one thing is having a caring, consistent adult relationship. That's really powerful to me because I think that can come in many forms. That can come in the form of a coach, someone who's pushing them. That can come in the form of an older sibling. That can come in the form of a family member, mom, dad, guardian, whoever it might be. But for some people, it also comes in the form of educators, of you all. I like to make sure that we recognize there's lots of people that are looking out for kids. It's not only on us to be able to do this. We're part of a bigger village. We're part of a team that's able to do that. But I think that for me, the part that this makes me think about is I want to make sure that if I don't know whether or not this student has that advocate, well, then I have an opportunity to maybe be that advocate, to be able to help them out there, to create that significant caring relationship, to help them be better than they were the day before, to let them know that they can do this work. Now, the challenge is that it's really easy to say all those things. It's a lot harder for me to then go about and do those on a day-to-day basis. My to-do list is really long on a day-to-day basis, but I think that this concept of being about relationships is on our to-be list. It's who we want to be as educators. In fact, I'd ask you that right now. Can you think about one of the most influential educators in your career? And could you do me a favor and put their name in the chat? I'd love to see who those people are. Name those people. It's always a cool exercise to do, not even just during Staff Appreciation Week, but in general. Mrs. Anderson, high school math. Tommy, Bob, college professor, Dr. Betts. Baby Griffin. Oh, they're coming in. It was interesting because for a lot of people, we didn't have to think too hard. We kind of knew when I said that question, like, oh, here's one. The people that did have to think hard sometimes had multiple people. They're like, oh, this one and this one and this one. I would ask you to think about why those people were the way they were. Tammy, would you be willing to unmute and share why that person that you thought of as an influential educator in your life was important? Like, what did they do to become this person you're reflecting on now years afterwards as an influential educator?
Well, I hated math in high school, and I used to like fart around and just walk around the halls and talk to friends. And she actually had a very dry personality and was not engaging to me at all. But she pulled me aside one time, probably about third quarter, and just very calmly in her dry way said, "What's going on with you? You can do better than this. I expect more from you." And it really wasn't warm and fuzzy, which is what I was used to. But when I decided to become a teacher, she's the first person I thought of, because she expected more from me, not just, I was very social and active in social things. And that's kind of what everyone, even my family, expected from me. Tammy's just a social one. And she just put that little seed in there that I can do more different things. And when I started college, I really hung on to that.
I love that. Thank you for sharing, Tammy. Is it Shannon? Would you be willing to share as well? Shannon M. There you go.
That's me. I didn't put anybody in the chat. I always struggle with this question because one of the teachers that had the most influence on me was because he was everything I didn't want to be. So he constantly compared me to my sister, who he had 2 years before me, and would always make statements like, well, your sister would never turn this in. Why would you, why can't you do better than this? So there were plenty of teachers that had a positive impact on me, but kind of unfortunately, that experience has motivated me to make sure that I don't make some of those mistakes that I felt that he made. So
awesome. I appreciate your honesty in sharing that. I think both those illustrate this concept that it's all about relationships in whatever way, form. Again, that teacher that Shannon was just talking about, the relationship wasn't necessarily a positive one. It was a frustrating one. It was one where I felt like, Shannon felt like she was being compared constantly. I love the other piece too that we were talking about, Tammy, is that the relationship that was there with her and that teacher doesn't always have to be this like warm and fuzzy one all the time. Sometimes relationships, especially relationships that are pushing you to be better, are there to hold you accountable, to be able to do that. And it doesn't always have to be like, again, in this warm and fuzzy way, but taking the time to invest in someone to say, hey, I know that you can do better than this. I expect more from you. I think that you've got this. I think about this idea that sometimes people think of relationships as a thing where we're just supposed to be friends with students and just let everything go, which I think is actually really not a good instructional strategy. We want to be able to provide high accountability and high supports. And that usually happens in good relationships. That's how it happens. I think about this concept of like love and how important it is in relationships. And when I like really invest in a relationship that revolves around this idea of love, I'm willing to say the hard things because I want that relationship to be better and I want that person to be better. It's not this soft, nice thing where it's just like, I just want to be liked. We know that being an educator is about building relationships so that we can push students forward, so that we can push them to be the best version of themselves. It's interesting. Those are two responses that I haven't heard quite often. But yet still in all my time doing this, I've never heard someone say the person that they thought of was really, really good at grading tests efficiently. I've never heard of someone say that like they responded to emails promptly. Sometimes that's because emails didn't exist then for a lot of us. But the general idea is that no matter what is being said in whatever context, we can always trace it back to this concept that it's all about relationships. Whether that be, again, this tension of opposites, sometimes we learn from the things that inspire us to be like that person, or sometimes it's, I don't want to be like that person. But either way, there's a relationship there that has pushed someone in a direction, that has given them that ability to process and to be the best version of themselves, or say, I want to make sure that I'm not that version of myself. Our goal at Character Strong is to provide tools to continue to build those relationships, to continue to be able to process. I think about that question again with Shannon and how powerful it would have been if that teacher would have taken the time to have a conversation with you, and if that ever would have like come up. If there ever would have been an opportunity to be able to say, what's one thing that is difficult for you? If they asked that question just in a general day-to-day ongoing classroom, and Shannon would be able to sit there and say, well, one of the things that's really hard for me is that I feel like I'm constantly being compared to my older siblings. And I'm a different person. I have different strengths. I have different hopes. I have different dreams. I think that if we were able to build a relationship, we might know those things. And that teacher might have had a different approach. They might have had a different way of saying, oh, I didn't know that. But I think that sometimes we just don't know the things about people in order to build a relationship. And so Character Strong provides tools to say, how do we get to know people? How do we build those relationships? How do we understand who people are? So I want to showcase one of those for you just briefly. I'm going to pop out of this presentation over into our actual platform. Character Strong has an entire digital platform at characterstrong.com that has all of this information, all of these resources for you that you'll have access for. We're going to look at it today. And then again, we don't want to overwhelm you, but it is a really cool thing that you can use, that you can dive into, that you can take resources for. So I'm going to go into this one first. It's part of our lessons. It's built in, but it's a relationship strategy. So I'm going to click here. There's a bunch of different opportunities. I've got 4 different get to know you activities with more coming later. That's how the system is built. I'm going to click on one of my favorites called 7 categories. And then I'm going to ask, is it Benjamin? Would you be willing to join us?
Sure.
Awesome. That's the last name. What's the first name?
Amanda.
Amanda. Awesome. How are you doing today, Amanda?
Pretty good. How are you?
Awesome. I'm doing well. I'm excited to be here. So with this process, it's literally just a couple of choose your own adventure clicks. So I have 7 categories up here. You get to pick one of these categories, and then you're going to get to pick one question inside that category to answer. Which one's looking good for you today, Amanda?
This or that.
This or that. And then numbers 1 through 7?
3.
3. So your question would be sunny or rainy, and why? What do you prefer?
Sunny, because I like the warmer weather, and rain makes me want to stay in bed and sleep all day.
Now, the rain that you get out there, is it like drizzle or is it like downpour?
Well, the last 3 days have just been wet altogether. So sometimes it pours, sometimes it just drizzles, sometimes it's something in between. But lately, it's just been wet.
Fair enough. That's really the Washington way. So I apologize if that's the experience you're getting, but we are just constant rain. We never have big rain, but it's always rain. So awesome. Thank you for sharing. Would you be willing to pick another person to join us up here? They could have an exclamation point, or you could just be like, oh, I want to hear from this person.
I'm going with Olivia.
Awesome. Thanks, Amanda.
Hi.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Got one that you're looking at that looks good?
Let's do my day.
My day, perfect. And then 1 through 7?
7.
Awesome. I'm going to invite all of you, for whatever this question is, while Olivia thinks of her answer, feel free to throw yours in the chat box too. So we'll get to learn a little bit about all of you. Again, we picked number 7. Your question is, what are the last 2 things you do before going to sleep and why?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to think about this.
Trying to run it back, yeah.
Yeah. I watch Full House and scroll through TikTok just to wind down.
I love it. What is the latest TikTok rabbit hole you've gone down?
Lately I've been in teacher TikTok. So I've been watching a lot of TikToks about craziness of the end of the year.
There's a lot of them, I'm sure, out there about what's going on. Now, are you on teacher TikTok and like Pinterest teacher TikTok and teacher Pinterest as well? Or do you just stay specifically with the TikTok?
TikTok. Just
I like it. We've got some other folks in here. Take out the dog. There's a couple TikTokers in there. Brush my teeth, read with kids, check on my babies, kiss my husband. Awesome. Olivia, can you pick one more person that we can ask to join us today?
Terry Kessler.
Awesome. Thanks, Olivia.
Okay, I choose my favorite.
My favorite, and then numbers 1 through 7?
7.
Perfect. What is your favorite song to sing/rap at the top of your lungs, and why?
Oh my goodness, that really depends upon what day it is, but it usually is something by the Killers, so let's go with Mr. Brightside.
Why?
I mean, the lyrics aren't such a happy story. Hey, Brown. Someone just sent me a little message. It's just a great song, and I actually danced with my son at his wedding to it. And if people really knew the lyrics, they'd probably think, for a wedding song? But I love the Killers, and it's a great song. Any of their songs, really.
I love that. When is the last time you feel like you just like blurted it out and just been yelling it? Was it on a car ride? Was it just on the radio? Like, do you remember the last time?
Yeah. 2 days ago.
Awesome.
Waiting outside. Yeah, for someone.
I love it. And was that an intentional choice, or was it a sporadic, like it just came on the radio and you were felt compelled?
Intentional.
Oh, I love it. Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing, Terry. I love these questions because there's lots of variety. It allows students to be able to choose and have a little bit of, I think it builds more engagement when students get to pick what they're doing and what they're involved in, but it also allows me to learn a little bit about people. There's some silly ones. We did some pretty low-level questions today. I don't think any of the questions were super deep or super vulnerable, but there are options where students can share different things. So if we're talking about Let's Learn, what would be the best field trip your school could organize and why? I might learn about a student's passion. Maybe they're really passionate about the zoo and animals, and they want to be a veterinarian, and they really want to be able to go on a field trip to the zoo to be able to explore. That's information that realistically in my everyday class would not normally come up because I don't ask that question. In fact, most of these questions are not questions I would normally ask my students. Quite frankly, it's just because I'm not that creative. I don't think about these things randomly. I don't have a randomly generated list of questions, but I do know that I can ask these and I can really be interested in what students have to say. It gives me the opportunity to learn about them. It gives me the opportunity to build relationships. And the more I get to know students, the easier it is for me to, again, I think, be an effective educator because I know what their strengths are. I know what their weaknesses are. I know the song that they might want to jam out to. When I know these things, again, it helps me build those relationships. And so Character Strong's goal is to give us more tools that we can use to get to know students, to get to know our colleagues, to do this work in our building. The goal is what we call, again, low burden, high impact strategies, where you don't have to do a lot of prep for this because realistically, we could make all this ourselves, but that's going to take time. It's going to take time. It's going to take ability to be able to do it. So we want to create it for you. And so there's a variety of these. They're all listed by different grade levels. So 6th, 7th, and 8th grade all have their own different set of activities with new activities that drop. But if we want to talk about this concept that it's all about relationships, well, we have to be able to provide opportunities to build that relationship, to be able to do that work. We believe that this is a necessary part of teaching the other half of the whole child. I think that we do a really good job in the academic sense. We have lots of PDs that are surrounding the academic work. We have my entire teacher education program was all about how to teach academics. Yet we know that academics is not everything students need. We know that there's more to it. Andrew Sokach, one of the lead researchers at the Character Lab, says when we focus on end of the year test scores, it equates to just 50% of what students need to be successful. And I want to be very clear, that means if we focus on just 50%, just on those skills, the skills of just reading, writing, arithmetic, those things. I don't think we just do that. I think that we already implicitly are teaching some of these social emotional skills, but we know that we can do more to teach the whole child. We know that the highest indicator of success isn't GPA or SAT. Anyone familiar with Angela Duckworth, her work and what she says it is? Give a second for the chat. If anyone's seen the TED Talk. She would argue that the number one most important factor for determining someone's success is the idea of grit, the ability to leverage failure to continue to get better, having a growth mindset, resilience, doing that work. We want to be very clear though, there's a big difference between like grit and pulling yourself up by the bootstrap mentality. I think those are two different things that sometimes get lumped together. Grit is a skill. And the people that say just pull yourself up by the bootstrap mentality, they assume that everyone has been taught that skill, that everyone has been given that opportunity. I always equate it to this idea of like if you put someone in like a room with the walls closing in or like a trash compactor. Bootstraps mentality is just saying, well, figure it out. Where grit is teaching them the strategies to look for something on the ground that can block the walls, looking for an off switch, teaching them how to build a ladder out of the materials that are around them to get out of that situation. Grit is a skill set versus the opposite is frankly offensive. To just assume that people can get better just by trying harder when they don't have the skills to do that. That's our job, is to be able to give them those skills. We also believe that this work is important because it is not possible for a person to be racist and socially emotionally well. If our job is to be anti-racist educators, if our job is to be able to teach students how to go and shape the world, well, we have to start with understanding ourselves. And that's a twofold approach. It's not just for students to be able to understand themselves, but it's also for us to understand who we are, to be able to acknowledge some of our own biases, to be able to understand the world that we grow up in is different than the world that's happening now. And so again, I love this quote because I think of it as just so obvious, but something we don't always think about. Somebody who is racist is not socially, emotionally well. There's something that's going on there that's harboring these feelings about other human beings based on things that are fabricated. So how do we be able to lay the foundations for creating a person who is well, who does not have to rely on those, who is able to challenge those systems in the real world? We also believe that soft skills are the new hard skills. Seth Godin would say soft skills are the real skills. They're the things that we use in everyday life. They're the things that we do. If you look at all of the things you do in your day-to-day world, whether it be your job or even at home, I think you would recognize there's a large amount of those skills that don't show up on any test, that aren't just going to show up on a test, a pen and paper test you can take. Your ability to communicate, your ability to problem solve, your ability to work as a team together. Those are all things that are soft skills, but in reality, they're the real skills. They're how we navigate our world. I was in a training in Texas, and one lady in the back says, well, hard skills will get you hired, but soft skills will get you fired. And everyone in Texas did this like unified nod. It was interesting. I've never seen it before, but it was really cool because everyone agreed that like these are the real skills. The last one we'll share is that we believe students need a deeper why. Sometimes this generation gets, I think, mislabeled, that they're like lazy and don't want to do things. I wholeheartedly disagree. I think that this generation will work harder than ever when they know why, when they have a purpose for why they're doing what they're doing. For a long time, even in my dad's generation, he just did things because someone told him to do it. Well, that's what I was told to do, so I did it. I just listened. I listened blindly. I was like, I didn't ask questions. I think this generation, our world has changed. They have access to so much more information. If you think about the difference between the life of even me when I was in middle school and life now, like this completely changes the game. A cell phone, having access to all this knowledge in the world, they are more connected than ever before. They know things and they want to know things. And so they need that deeper purpose why. The challenge that Angela Duckworth would say is that we can't just give them a why, but we can start asking the question. We can start getting them to think about what their purpose is. We can start getting them to wonder. We know that this work of teaching the other half of the whole child is important, but we want to make sure that we are grounded in that why before we can get to the how. Because when you know why this work is so important, it allows us to be able to push harder on how we make this happen. What are the things that we need to do? We firmly believe that people want to be kind, courageous, humble. They just don't always know what that looks like. They don't necessarily have examples of that. And so our curriculum is designed to be able to get them to think about it, to be able to give them opportunities to say, what does this look like for me? What does this look like in my world? What does this idea of character look like in my life? We think it's very important to note that no one has a authority or a monopoly on what good character looks like. We might have examples of what it looks like in our life, but the reality is students have different lives. They're coming from different backgrounds, from different cultures, and none of us have the ability to say that this is what respect looks like. I remember years ago, before the pandemic hit, I used to teach about good handshakes. I owned a DJ business at the time, and when I would hire people, if they had a bad handshake, the interview was pretty much over. Because I was like, to me, that represented the fact that they were missing some other skills. And so if I, as a business owner, weren't hiring people for having good handshakes, I probably, as an educator, would want to teach that skill. And so as we were doing it, my rule was 2-2-2, 2 eyes, 2 seconds, 2 shakes. And a girl, after we had explained this, said, well, that doesn't really work for me. And I said, well, why? And she says, well, in my culture, if I'm looking someone in the eyes, it's actually a sign of disrespect. My job in that moment is not to be like, well, that's not true. That's not what happens in the real world. That's offensive. My job is to say, well, tell me more about that. Because realistically, she has a better understanding of respect than I do because she knows about it in a variety of contexts. She knows about when and where to use it. She has a higher level of understanding of this concept than I do. And I don't have any right as an educator or a person to be able to say, well, no, my way is better. What I have to do is to be able to get her to think about, what does this look like for you? How do we do that? And so we provide opportunities for kids to think about that. We provide opportunities for adults to think about that because quite frankly, we're never done in this social emotional journey. We know that it takes work for us too. The work around character education is about adult behavior as much as it is about student behavior. I want to show you really quickly what a lesson looks like because I think that that is one of the bigger pieces that we get hung up on is what does this look like? How do I do that? So I'm going to jump back into that lesson plan that we were in. I'm going to kind of restart it so that you can see it. It's all done on a digital platform where, again, you can see it. The lessons are there. Currently, we have rolled out. We've actually redesigned the entire curriculum because, well, the world really needed it. If you think about a curriculum that was written in 2016, how relevant is that to today? Not very. A lot has happened in the last 5 years. A lot of things have gone on. And so we really went to town to work with students based on their feedback about what are the things that we need? What are the things that we need to make happen? We worked with educators from all across the United States. And actually globally, we had a couple people from other areas join to be able to design this. And so every lesson has 5 components. Start intentionally. There's an engage relationally. There's a content component. Here's what we are learning. I always think this is not a character strong piece. This is just my own thing, that there's a difference between social emotional learning and social emotional health. And I think that the learning is like teaching of the skills. How do we get better at this work? The health is how do we just make sure people are okay? How do we're taking care of the belonging and the well-being piece? And I think Character Strong does a really good job of doing both. Their focus is, again, that idea of well-being, of engagement, and belonging. Those are the 3 core outcomes of what the curriculum is supposed to create. The last part is a character dare. It's a challenge, and then we end intentionally as well. I want to walk you through what that looks like. These are all hyperlinks, so it does have the ability to be able to be used as you see fit. Some schools will do this all designed as a 30-minute lesson. Some schools are like, no, we're going to do 10 minutes a day. We want to focus and we want to chop it up each day. Some schools will do half one day, half the other. The goal is to be able to give you a tool that works for whatever project you want to create. It's not to say here's how it has to be done, but here's a tool that helps make this easier. So as we click the start button, it will always give you a fill in the blank prompt. So students will see this. You'll recognize that everything is housed within this component. I can go full screen here and it will allow me to not even need to use any of this other work. There it is. I can use this. I can project it. I can display it. They're built to be able to be shared in classrooms, but also in case we ever go back to a virtual environment, there are virtual adaptations for all these activities. This would be on the board as you start to fill in the blanks. They get to share. One thing I practiced a lot is I'm currently feeling blank, and it gives the instructions for what staff need to do. 1 to 2 people will share as we get started. I keep clicking through. Today's Get to Know You game recommendation is 4 corners. These are the games and activities we just did. It gives a recommendation. You'll see that with a heart, but you can also pick anything because sometimes kids really love one. We don't have to be able to do the same one over and over again. Maybe they say, we want to do a would you rather today. So they get to click on those. It has examples, different things. Here's a 4-corner one. You can move to a different side of the room based on a different picture, which one you like, what season you like the best, which one feels the best. And you click the go back button. It'll give you more options. Share which one best fits your personality or mood. I can click here. Today, I am definitely feeling like a 1. I'm feeling very busy. And so I could ask a student in that corner, why did you pick that question? Things to, again, keep students engaged, but also get to know how they're doing, see where they're at. I can click back, keep going through here, and you'll see up here I have those same icons. So when I'm ready to go, I can click either here, done, and it'll take me to the next section, or you can see up here, these icons will allow me to navigate. The activity is called Here or There. Today we'll do an activity called Here or There. The goal is to talk about the difference between what we prefer and what we practice. As you click through all the questions and ideas, everything is embedded in this. The goal is that this is a tier 1 strategy, meaning any teacher can be able to do it with very minimal prep, if any. The one thing I always like to tell people to ease their anxiety is that I am a mentoring coordinator. I run a mentoring program with the 10th, 11th, and 12th graders at my school. They are actually the facilitators of this curriculum to our freshmen. So I always like to show that, again, if students with very minimal training are able to do this, even if this is outside of your core curriculum, you're still going to be able to rock it because you have all the skills you need as an educator already. It says, let's start with having 3 people answer this question. What is the difference between your personality and your character? We get some examples, we move on. Well, there are lots of ways to think about the difference. Here's one way to think about it. Personality is what you prefer, and character is what you practice. Your personality is a gift. It's something that's natural. It's something that, again, there's nothing wrong with, but character is all about the choices we make. It's the practices that we have. We're going to do an activity to help us see this. In each round, you'll have 3 options: here, there, or share. I'll read off a few prompts. For each, you can choose to go here, one side of the room, there, the other side of the room, or share, which means you like both options and you want to stay in the middle of the room. I'll call on one person each round to share why they made the choice they did. First one is up. Here, I really like watching movies. There, I really like reading. You can see it has arrows to help you divide this parts of your room. Here, share is right down the middle. You'd ask students to be able to talk about that. Again, questions to get to know people, but also we're learning a skill as we go through that. You'll see up here, there's icons that describe. This one's going to take about 2 minutes. It's an action slide. And so as you get used to this, you'll be able to see what the icons mean. It's designed to, again, try to be as user-friendly as possible. There's a number of different questions here. I like when there's lots of people, I like spending time alone, getting people to see, again, those preferences that we have. I like talking to others. I like listening to others. And then, again, find a seat, instructions to go back into your classroom. There are videos that are embedded in this where you don't have to go anywhere else. One of the cool parts that we've really worked on is that we found sometimes when we say something as educators over and over again, students won't get it, but then one other person, outside person, will come in and say the exact same thing that we just said, and kids are like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And we're like, what have we been talking about this whole time? So we try to bring that outside person in. We have adults, basically hosts and student hosts who are there that are walking along this process with them. And so you'll see videos of them talking about these same subjects. We have people from all across the United States, all backgrounds, we want students to be able to see themselves in this work, to be able to see themselves on the screen and invested in some of the quotes that we share and all of that work. And so we want to make sure that they have examples of, here's what this looks like for some other students. So there's videos that's all embedded. You don't have to go to separate websites. The goal is, again, one platform to do it all. As you keep clicking through, it will give you the opportunity to, I click the video to play. Now my computer is loading. It will ask you again, all the prompts are built in. What are the top 3 things you will have to practice this year to make school better? What are the preferences? So we all have preferences, but practice takes work. What are the top 3 things that might make practicing your character hard? Questions that are all built in to be able to, again, make it easy for you, the educator. The last piece you'll see up here is a character dare. Our character isn't what we prefer, it's what we practice. From now on, we're going to end each session with the character dare process. The dare is a challenge, a way to help us put each session into practice. It's like a workout for your heart. The next slide is today's dare. Write 1 sentence note to someone in your family, telling them one thing you are grateful for about them. Then leave it somewhere where they'll find it today. You can give them an opportunity to literally write the note in class, or you can challenge it depending on the time that you have left. And there's some questions to process it. Each time a dare is introduced, there will be 1 to 2 questions here for us to answer. Who will you be writing your note to? Why do you think they will appreciate it? To end, we'll always do a quick reflection. You have 30 seconds to think about your answer to the next question on the next slide. I will call on a few people to share their thoughts. You may always pass. 2 people will share one way they will remind themselves to do the dare before next week. That's a session in a nutshell. We ran through it really quickly because we have a limited amount of time. But as you can see, there's not a ton that you have to prep for. In this session, there's 0. That's one of the goals, is that we don't want this to be another prep. We don't want it to be anything that you can't do on the fly. We also know that some of you are very process oriented, and you want to make sure that you run through it. You want to look through it. You want to know all of the things that are happening. So there's actually a section built here that's an at a glance. If you want an overview of what this lesson is going to be, it has the context. It talks about grouping, how students are going to move. It talks about if you're going to be sharing something, educators share, to be prepared to say something, modifications if needed, and then other notes. And again, there's reminders down here that you can look through and click through. So for the people that do like to prepare for things, we provided that for you, but the goal is that you don't have to. We also have these lessons in Spanish, and there will be overview videos of them as well. If you need a video explainer of someone walking through it, similar to what I just did, those will be embedded into the actual platform itself. As we get ready to roll out, they have the first 8 sessions for next year ready to go. But again, they're going to be releasing those over the course of the summer as they get polished up. They're just not ready for tech yet. They're kind of doing all this fancy stuff. I'm just really impressed that they made this little GIF thing. That's a big win for me because now it feels more interactive. But the goal is to give educators and students a product that makes it really easy to do this work. Low burden, high impact. That's the hope. And so those will be tools that we have to be able to use. I like to share in this process of character dares, one of my favorites, and it'll be one of the things we do to semi-wrap up. The character dare is really the practice piece. It's the chunk where I can learn a lot about basketball. I know a lot about basketball. I'm just not very good at it. And the reason why is I don't practice. So if we talk about social emotional skills and talk about all those things, but we don't actually do anything, we're not getting to a place where we've practiced. We're not getting to a place where we're better at that skill. And so one of the ways that Character Strong has created that I think makes them really strong, it's one of the things that I love that we get to do, is what's called the character dare. I'm going to share with you my favorite. This is not a middle school dare. I want to be very clear about that because some people see it and you're like, this one's heavier. I'm sharing you this dare because it's been one of the most impactful in my life. And I just like to give people that same opportunity that Character Strong gave me. This dare is all about humility. It's a challenging one. You'll see here that there's a number of plates. It means it's difficult. It's heavier. It's not going to take a lot of time, but it involves 2 people. And I'm just going to watch your eyes when I read it. That's my favorite part because the dare is this. It's called Breakfast of Champions. Message 5 people the following text. What is one way I could be better in our relationship? Just watch the eyes because people are like, ooh, that's heavy. You're right. It is heavy. Asking for feedback helps us identify gaps in our life. When we know about the gaps and take action to close them, we show great humility. Whatever your people respond with, you cannot get defensive. Just clarify if needed and tell them thank you for their time and honesty. I'm going to ask you just to take a picture of this. I don't need you to do it right now. We're not going to have the time to process. We've got a couple minutes to wrap up. And so I just want to make sure that you have this opportunity. I first saw this dare in 2017. I originally got it and I was like, 5 people? I don't know 5 people that I could text. So my facilitator said, text 1. Just try 1 then. If you don't have 5, text 1. So I text my dad, most important person in the world to me. Grew up as a single father, just a great human being. I love him. He's everything. And so I text him, what is one way I could be better in our relationship? He texts back, oh man, I'm so proud of you. I love you. There's nothing you can do. And I was like, oh yeah, look at me. Good job. I felt good about that. But our facilitator actually said, sometimes people are really uneasy about giving feedback. The feedback, yeah, so some people know this dare because it's powerful. Some people, my dad said, the facilitator said some people are uncomfortable giving feedback. And so we have to prompt them. We have to be able to say like, hey, I really need it. So I asked him, if you could give me one piece of feedback, what would it be? And he said, I really wish I would see you more often. A simple piece of feedback, but really profound for our relationship because we live really close to each other. We live in the same city. I often drive by his house when I go to get food. The concept of seeing him more often was really easy for me to do, but it never crossed my mind. So all I did was say, hey, do you want to grab some food? He said, absolutely. In fact, we started that often. Anytime I would go out to eat, I would just ask him if he wanted to join. My dad is never busy. Even when he shows up, he was like in the middle of like cleaning the yard, covered in scraps of grass and everything. But he wanted to hang out. He wanted to be able to see me. Last November, I got one of the best compliments I've ever received because of this dare, we started to see each other every Tuesday. My dad's name is Marty. We call it Tuesdays with Marty. And I made a commitment that I want to see him once a week. So we go get food every week. And in November, we were leaving Buffalo Wild Wings. And he said, you know, I really look forward to Tuesdays. And that is by far the best compliment I've ever received in my life because I worked really hard at being better in this relationship. If I look back and think about this, and if I didn't ask this question, if I didn't go to that presentation in 2017, 20 years from now when my dad's maybe not doing as well, it would destroy me if he said, you know, I really wish I would have seen you more these last 20 years. And I know not everyone has that same opportunity. I don't share that to cause heartache. I share it because there's power in this dare. And I like to just give people that opportunity. There's power in all of these dares, even if you don't do them. That's my favorite part of the entire process. Some of you right now are thinking about who you would text and you're like, oh, I'm not ready for that because I know they would say this. That's perfectly okay. That's feedback in itself. That's processing. That's valuable. We believe in this truth or dare process. Truth or dare means that when we're sharing out, we give you the opportunity to say your truth. Truth might mean, this dare is really hard for me. I didn't text anyone because I'm not ready for it. I know what they're going to say, and I just don't feel like I'm in a place to hear that. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing your truth. That's a perfectly valid response. We don't want to guilt anyone into doing this. Character is a personal choice. I never want to force someone to do a dare, especially like an honesty dare. Like, yes, you better do this. And then they lie about it. We kind of miss the mark there. We never want to force people to do that work. We believe that dares aren't required. The power is always in the discussion. You could ask them truth or dare. If they say dare, they might talk about how it went. Here's how it went. Sometimes it maybe went well. Sometimes maybe it wasn't as good. Sometimes there were struggles and we can talk through those, but it gives them an opportunity to practice. We believe that in an anti-racist classroom, just as teachers must strive to get to know their students as individuals, students should have opportunities to get to know their teachers. I always start the dares with me sharing my perspective. what happened with my dare. And oftentimes I forget the dares. So I didn't do this dare this week, but if I did, I think I would text this person because our relationship has been a little iffy as of late, and I want to get better. The last conversation we had has been like 2 months, and so I really want to reach out to them and see how we can stay in contact better. I can share my own personal views to let them know that we're human too. It's always good. I like to point this out that like you're professionals. If you're wondering like, well, some of these things are inappropriate to share, you're absolutely right. So be a professional and don't share those things. This is not marriage counseling. This is not any of those things, but we can talk about our lives as humans without diving into the messy stuff that we should be paying therapists for. So I always like to just make sure that if you are worried about that, you're right. We know where the line is of what we can talk about as human beings without using or without oversharing. That's literally the words that kids said. They said, we love it when teachers share. Just don't overshare. That was from the mouths of our student advisory board. But I always like to, again, just give folks this opportunity to do the work. So if you would like to take a picture of this, I give a few pre-corrections as we wrap up. If you have more than 5 people in your family, you might want to send it to and you're going to send it to 5 of them, send it to the 6th or 7th because nobody wants to be that odd person out. The text says, what is one way I could be better in our relationship? We had a lady once that just said, how could I be better? And I feel like her son copy and pasted a notes page from his phone and was like, here are the list of things, of complaints, of grievances I have. It's not what this is about. It's also not a group chat. Do not start a thread with this. That gets really weird really fast. But if you would like to try this, if you'd like to give it a go, I just think it's really valuable. It's been incredibly helpful for me as a human, as an educator, as a person. And I just wanted to give you that snippet before we wrap up and then talk about this. We believe that the more opportunities people have to practice, the more likely they will to develop the habits. You can fill in the blanks with whatever you want. This is humility. The more we practice it, the more they're going to be able to do that. And so we look forward to diving into more of this. We know that we have to be able to do something about this. Intentions minus actions equals squat. If we're not doing anything to really put this into play, to put this curriculum into action, it's just some talk. And our goal is today not to give you an overwhelming number of things to think about. Our goal is to paint a picture of what next year could look like, to paint a picture of how this could benefit not only our students, but us as educators. I wholeheartedly believe that the best thing I can do as an educator to teach character to my students is to practice my own, to be able to demonstrate it for them on a day-to-day basis, because students are watching what we do far more than they listen to what we say. And so I love that Character Strong gives me that opportunity to be able to walk on this journey alongside that. So we hope that we provided some overview. It's a sneak peek. We try to put a lot in here today so that you have a general idea of what's going to happen. As we continue on in August, we'll be able to dive deeper in that. We'll give you opportunities to process, to think about what that looks like, how this is going to build in your building, in your school. But for today, I just want to say thank you for your time. I hope that you got something that you could take away. I'm going to pass it back over to Dr. Singletary for a couple of nuts and bolts before we wrap up.
Well, I appreciate you definitely for coming in. So thank you so much. And I know our staff definitely appreciates you in your work. And so we're definitely excited to continue this work as we come back in the fall. And so again, thank you. Thank you. I would say for our staff, again, this is something that we're going to be getting into as we come back in August. Talking about, I know there are probably some questions swirling. What does this look like? But we will go ahead and talk about that in August. Don't have to worry about it. But with the actual structure, when we're going to do the lessons, is that doing life ed? Just don't worry about those pieces. We will go ahead and kind of get those squared away for you. The only thing I would say just in closing is, relationships has been one of the hallmarks of what our focus has been this year, especially during this time. With the pandemic and everything like that, your relationships that you build with your students have been paramount, and they've really your students have been entrusted with you, and they've trusted you through this process, whether that been hybrid or face-to-face or distance learning. We've been through a lot, and you know that your relationships that you've built with those students have hopefully been paying some dividends when those students came back, and those learners that we've had that we've continued to have that have been online. So please do not take this for granted. This is a fantastic opportunity for us here at Plaza. The last couple things just with nuts and bolts. I will be sending out some information for end of the school year pieces when it comes to things that you need for staff as far as getting your rooms prepared for next year, and kind of just those wonderful times of the year where we get things like keys and bulletin boards and all that fun stuff. Okay, so please be paying attention to your emails. I'll be sending those out to staff here in the coming days as I put together some pieces and some documents for staff that'll either be directly coming from me or that will be disseminated through your team leads. Okay. With that being said, Jenny, do you have anything, or Mr. Van Horn, do you have anything as well?
I will upload this after the fact and send you guys all out the link. And if you know somebody that wasn't here, if you want to encourage them to watch it, it was great. Thanks.
Yep. And so it is currently raining outside. Cole, we talked about rain. I mean, here we're in Missouri right now, so I mean it'll probably be. We had snow a couple of weeks ago, so it'll probably be a tornado tomorrow, right? So with that being said, and the last but not least, Matt Calvin, Ashley Schroyer, and Mallory Malone, we just got some data back. I think, guys, we tested over 95% of our students in MAP testing. So that's a huge deal for us. So congratulations to the staff for putting that together, and congratulations to Matt, and more importantly for our kids. And that includes our online students. So guys, we had 95% of everybody from the over 700 students that we had here. So that's fantastic. And we finished up some of that work. So big kudos and big shout out to our student services. So with that being said, Coley, do you have anything that you need to do for us? Okay.
Nope.